Good afternoon. As many of you already know, we have started these daily press briefings last week in order to help keep the media and the general public as informed and up to date as possible. In order to practice social distancing and abide by the order we issued last week to avoid gatherings of more than 10 people, these briefings will now be virtually only. The COVID-19 crisis changes every day, but we will continue to work through whatever challenges we might face and ensure we are doing all we can to communicate with you. Today, there are five main topics I will provide updates on. Plans for the Capitol building and our state workforce. An executive order regarding restaurant sales. An update on Missouri's food supply. Updates from the Department of Commerce and Insurance. An update on Missouri's request for assistance through the U.S. Small Business Administration. I then will turn it over to Department of Public Safety Director Sandy Carson, OA Commissioner Sandy Stillman, and DCI Director Clora Lindley Myers. First, I would like to address the plans that are being put in place for the state workforce and the state Capitol building. The health and safety of all Missourians, including our state workforce, is our top priority. And the best way to stop the spread of COVID-19 virus is by social distancing as much as possible. Starting tomorrow, March the 24th, we will be closing the state capitol and state office buildings throughout the state. Only identified essential personnel will be allowed access to the state capitol building, and only essential personnel will report to work at other state offices. Our cabinet directors have identified essential personnel and will be reaching out to their teams today. As public servants, our fellow citizens rely on us to serve them, especially during tough times. Many of you work in facilities where you have to be hands-on with your job. Many of you are already working remotely, and many of you will shift to remote work or alternative arrangements in the coming days. We will continue to work through whatever obstacles we may face to ensure we keep our state employees safe while still providing critical services to Missourians. And I want to thank all our state employees rising to this challenge and continuing to be the outstanding public servants even during such a difficult time. Now, I'd like to give an update regarding restaurant sales and Missouri's food supply. Due to the public health threat caused by COVID-19, many restaurants have limited or ceased their normal business operations. Today, I signed an executive order suspending the enforcement of local regulations that prohibit restaurants from selling unprepared food to members of the public. We hope this will not only assist restaurants financially during this time and avoid unnecessary waste, but also help meet the increased demand for food across the state. Many of you have seen bare grocery store shelves. I want to assure you this is a demand issue, not a supply issue. Our food supply remains strong, and our farmers, ranchers, processors, manufacturers, and grocery stores across the state are working hard to keep the shelves restocked. Today marks the start of National Agriculture Week, and I want to thank all of those in the agriculture industry for what they do, especially during a time like this. Agriculture plays a vital role in taking care of our most basic needs during a public health emergency. Missouri Department of Agriculture Director Chris Chin will join us on Wednesday to provide more updates. But last week, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security identified food and agriculture as essential critical infrastructure workers during the COVID-19 response, alongside healthcare, public safety, and other critical industries. These include anyone working on the farms, in the livestock arenas, and the feed supply chain, the food processing or manufacturing grocery stores, and others that help supply agriculture needs. To anyone working in the food production and agriculture from farm to fork, you have been more important. Your effort through these difficult times will sustain our communities and our nation. Next, I will give an update on the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance. In order to expand the use of telehealth to better serve the needs of Missourians during the COVID-19 crisis, the Department of Commerce and Insurance is waiving a state statute for individuals licensed in other states. This will allow healthcare providers to use telehealth to collaborate in the treatment of patients. Additionally, the Division of Professional Registration is working to quickly remove certain statutory barriers that will allow more trained healthcare professionals to work in ways that are both safe and productive. And these include extending the time of a temporary permit invalid for nurses, allowing graduate nurses to continue working past the 90-day period allowed following graduation, continue to increase the practical use of telehealth, and waiving certain existing rules and statutes to assist pharmacists in dispensing medications and managing some tasks remotely. Lastly, I would like to give a quick update on Missouri's recent request for assistance through the United States Small Business Administration. Last week, I directed the Missouri State Emergency Management Agency and the Missouri Department of Economic Development to seek assistance for small businesses throughout the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. The SBA has approved our request, which will make low-interest disaster loans available statewide to small businesses and private nonprofit organizations severely impacted by COVID-19. Now, I'll hand this over to Director Carson to give us an update on the Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon. At the Department of Public Safety and the State Emergency Management Agency, the top issue we're dealing with today is the same one we were dealing with last week and over the weekend, and that is PPE, personal protective equipment for hospitals, EMS, law enforcement, and the fire service. Everyone that uses PPE needs more of it. I can tell you that we are pursuing PPE from all available sources and working to turn it around and ship to those who need it as soon as possible. We're talking about a total of millions of PPE supplies, from gowns, masks, shields, goggles, and gloves at a cost of millions of dollars. To bring you up to date, last week, our Strategic National Stockpile received truckloads of gowns, masks, shields, and gloves. We divided up those shipments and other PPE shipments that were received the week before and sent to a total of 147 hospitals and EMS agencies. In all, more than 500,000 PPE were shipped out to hospitals and EMS. That helped relieve their needs, but we know it's only temporary and many more are in need of PPE. The first shipment was made on the 19th of March, and the last shipment, the most recent one, was made about 45 minutes ago. I told you last week that we expect to be receiving a total of hundreds of thousands of PPE materials for law enforcement and the fire service beginning tomorrow. The first of those supplies arrived today. It was just 200 sets of protective goggles. We expect to continue to receive much more PPE for our first responders over the next week to 10 days. It will be shipped to law enforcement and fire safety agencies across the state as soon as possible. Now, here's what we're doing to acquire more PPE. We're currently working to procure millions of dollars worth of PPE through 3 sources: our disaster funds for the state of Missouri, the Strategic National Stockpile, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It is our understanding that our partners are working as fast as possible to bring this PPE to the state of Missouri, and I want to assure all agencies that we are working as fast as possible to get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. I'd like to now turn it over to Commissioner Steelman for a few remarks.
Thank you, Governor Parson, for taking these important steps to protect the well-being of the public and the workforce. And I also have to say a big thank you to the incredible public servants who have stepped up and worked many, many hours and weekends to keep the operations of government going. I certainly appreciate my Office of Administration team. Starting tomorrow, as the governor told us, the state office buildings will be closed to the public, but we are still providing essential government services. And just to be clear, there are about 300 leased office buildings around the state and 36 state-owned office buildings throughout the entire state, with a total of around 10,000 people. All departments have already identified key personnel who need to be physically present in buildings to perform essential services, and those people will be the people coming to work every day. And of course, we have a lot of those people already in corrections, in mental health institutions, in veterans' homes, who cannot go home or cannot work remotely. But the good news is that we have, as of today, almost 15,000 people working remotely. The same holds true for here at the Capitol. We are closing the Capitol to the public. Only essential personnel will be allowed into the Capitol, and we are working with the House and the Senate to make sure that this runs smoothly. We are working together on that. Governor Parson communicated all of this information to the state workforce today in an email and made it clear what he was asking people to do. Additionally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the operations of state government. Our IT folks have stood up a chatbot for the Department of Health and Senior Services to alleviate the pressure on the call center. They also stood up an additional call center to help, again, take more calls that are coming in from the public. Our facilities team has worked tirelessly cleaning and sanitizing offices, and we are very grateful to the state maintenance and janitorial crews who continue to do this. We've set up management tools using technology to get visibility across the state in order to make good decisions about state operations and available resources. This includes several different types of reports that are being incorporated into a GIS map so we can view all facilities and the status of the workforce, the status of the buildings, and other things like that to help us make better operational decisions. And communicating with our workforce is extremely important to us. So we have created a web page available for all state employees, keeping them up to date about health advice and all the management type information such as leave guidance, travel guidance, FAQs, building closure guidance, to name just a few. And our purchasing folks have again worked, I will say relentlessly, to identify resources to purchase those additional medical supplies and healthcare supplies that Sandy referred to that we need so desperately. I want to mention our surplus property program is also available to work with local governments, and they've already transferred many supplies to them, and they will continue to do that as they become available. Again, I'm grateful for all the hardworking people who are keeping the state running at this time.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll now hear from the Department of Commerce and Insurance Director, Lindsley Myers. Laura?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor Parson. As the governor mentioned, the Department of Commerce and Insurance has been working very hard to address details in our current statutes and regulations that need to be modified to allow for the very best health care for our citizens during this public health crisis. We're staying in close contact with the insurance industry who operates in our state and the financial institutions we regulate. We can assure you that the services you rely on during a crisis are being managed and maintained. Our insurance industry and our banks are strong and have been looking at quickly mobilizing to meet the needs of the consumers that they serve, and they do their part in helping us out. From insurance companies to banks to public utilities, everyone is pulling together to assist in any way that they can. There is a full list of all of the waivers we've requested that have been approved on the professional registration website at pr.mo.gov. In addition to waivers related to healthcare services, there's also waivers pertaining to educational and testing requirements for certain professional licenses during a time when educational and testing facilities are not available. We appreciate the work of our regulatory boards and commissions during this time. Many of those who serve on these boards are healthcare professionals themselves who are also working to meet the needs of their patients. This is what public service is about, and we want to thank them for moving quickly to reduce the barriers and allow our doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and many others to continue to serve the citizens of our state. I want to thank all the members of DCI who continue to work tirelessly in assisting in this effort. Thank you, Governor.
Clara, thank you very much. I also want to say for the directors across the state and the state employees, 50,000 of them, matter of fact. State employees, 50,000 of them, matter of fact.